she already told a little bit of the story of how we met. So it was about 5 years ago. There was a writing group that was ongoing here in Berkeley, and a number of women are here. I saw Janine and Mary back there, and oh, sorry. Oh. All right, is that better? The way that this group worked is that there was a group of women writers who would meet every Wednesday morning for a few hours, and we would write to prompts. And we had been doing this for a couple of years. Well, Alexandra walked in one day. She was quite nervous. We remember that. And she told us that she left her teaching job as a middle school teacher because she was going to write a novel. Well, we all smiled politely at her because, after all, we had been writing for years together, and we had all been trying to sell a book. And Alexandra came that week, and she came back, and we were so glad to see her again, because Alexandra wrote and wrote and wrote, and boy, this woman can write fast and get words down on the page. And we were amazed how the story of Elizabeth just poured out of her. Alexandra made us laugh, she made us cry, we cheered her on, and she just wrote this story. It was amazing. Well, 2 years later, I had kind of been following these online writing contests, and I heard about one where you could submit the first page of your novel, and if it was accepted, it would get posted online, and then agents could come, and if they liked that first page, they could bid and ask to see the rest of the novel. Well, Alexandra submitted her first page, it got accepted, and all of a sudden a bidding war ensued. And the writing group, we all just were glued to the screen watching this happen. And maybe, Alexandra, you could tell us a little bit about what happened next.
Well, as everyone was glued to the screen watching my bidding war, I was trying not to cry in a coffee shop because I was looking at the wrong place for the bids. And so I was convinced that no one wanted my book, and I was, what did I do wrong? And meanwhile, people are texting me being like, great job! And I'm like, no, it isn't! It's not a great job at all! So yeah, so that's what happened next. But I was very fortunate. My manuscript, the way it would work is an agent would say, I will, in the comment section, they'd say, I will read 5 pages. And then another agent might say, I'll read 10, I'll read 20, I'll read 30. And so I was very fortunate because my novel got bid up to the full manuscript very quickly. And so I had the agent who won it had a week exclusive with it to read it and decide, and then at the end of that week other agents could request to see it. So I was very fortunate because I got 3 agent offers, and so I was able to choose an agent for myself that I've been really, really happy with. He's a wonderful guy. And yeah, and then we worked really hard. My novel at that point hadn't really been seen by anybody except for my writing group, and they'd seen it in 15 to 20 minute writing spurts at a time. And I had just really just kind of taken all these weekly writing chunks that I had and I had put them together in a way that sort of resembled a story. And so it still needed a lot of work. And so my agent and I went through 2 major revisions before we submitted it. And I was fortunate, it sold pretty fast. So, and that was 2 years ago. So it's amazing. Publishing is very, very slow. My novel sold 2 years ago, almost to the day today. And now here it is.
And it was a 2-book deal, I'll add. So Alexandra's working on another book that I'm sure you'll hear more about. And Alexandra's actually working on that book right now with another critique group that started, Kate in the second row. We all swap pages every week and do a really intensive critique session of each other's pages every week. And I was thinking about this on the way here, that it's interesting. We're all mothers, and we each have 2 daughters. And one of the things that's really fascinated me about What I Lost is the mother-daughter conflict to the story. There's a YA author named Laura McNeil, and she said that when she read What I Lost, she loved the father in the story, but she said the portrait of the mother adds a new dimension to the anorexia story. So I was going to ask Alexandra, maybe you can talk a little bit more about the mother-daughter layer that that you wrote about.
Yeah, sure. So the mother in my book has what's called disordered eating. And that's sort of one step short of a full-blown eating disorder. It's somebody whose eating is very irregular. They might decide that they don't eat white foods, or they don't eat this, or they don't eat that. There's a lot of ways it can manifest. And the mom, though, manages to straddle the line. She's never 100% ill at any given time. And I wrote her that way. Well, first off, I should say, in my life, it was funny because, I had my eating issues, and there's more and more research that's coming out that's showing that there might be a genetic link in eating disorders. And the irony being that in my house, growing up, my mom and my grandmother and my aunts, they never had any issues with their body image, with their weight, with what they ate. Every night to this day, my mom, who's right there, she's like, ooh, what's something sweet I could have? Do you have anything sweet? Every single night. My grandmother, when I said I was going on a diet, she's like, oh, you can eat this cake. I made it with margarine. And so I had a very healthy women in my life, as role models for me. So I don't know, who knows where it came from with me, but I was interested in that dynamic of how does our family, or how can a family affect somebody's eating, and how can it pass down? And as a parent and as a eating disorder survivor, I also was very, very, very aware of what I was saying and doing, and really thinking about the effects that my actions and my thoughts and all of that stuff could have on my daughters. I have two beautiful daughters, and so I decided I wanted to really investigate that. And it was one thing that was very important to me was that the mom comes off pretty terribly in a lot of the book. But she's not, she loves her daughter, and she's struggling too. And so for me, that was a really important, as I was writing it, it was very important to me to show that everybody has their demons, and sometimes we don't know why people act the way they do, but there's usually a reason, and that, even if you're treating someone, you might not treat someone the way that, you're supposed to, but it doesn't mean you don't love them with all your heart, and her mother loves her with all her heart. So, and also as a teacher, I had had students in the past who did have strange relationships with food with their moms. I had one student once who said that she and her mom were in a contest to see who could lose more weight fastest. And I would have moms come in, and I don't know what it was like at their house, but just the moms were worried. I don't know any woman who isn't concerned about, at some level, about their looks or their appearance or what they're eating or what they're, or, oh my God, since I've had so many friends say to me, since the election I've gained all this weight, who hasn't? Like, I have, it's like our protective layer. But it comes, but it does, it does manifest itself in a lot of different ways. And so I really wanted to explore that in my book.
I know another thing is that a number of us who got to read early drafts of this story remember this story in different versions. And so another thing that I was really curious about is, what did you decide to edit out of this book, or what were any major changes that you made before it came to where it is today?
Yeah. So the book is, right now, the book as it is, it's about 83,000 words. And I wrote 250,000 unique words for this
Very
story.
fast, Alexandra.
Yes. My character, it's funny because all the things that I cut out in my brain still happened to her. It's just parts of the story that I didn't include. So the book starts in October, but originally it started on the first day of school. And wow, I wrote the heck out of that whole month. There's so, every single day is accounted for, and all that went. When I got my agent, the book was actually a dual point of view. So it was actually told from two different characters' perspectives. And my agent said, I don't think that's working. And so I had to get rid of about probably 30,000 words and rewrite them all from Elizabeth's perspective. And that was painful because I love the other point of view. The other point of view might show up at some point in another book. But yeah, so I had to cut all of that out. So there's so many things that happened to poor Elizabeth that you guys just don't know about, but maybe someday you will, who knows.
So I also want to say that as your friend, I am so proud of you, that to see you up here tonight speaking so openly about your own struggles with your eating disorder, and really I'm just blown away. I mean, you really are a survivor, Alexandra, and I'm getting really emotional talking about it. So I'm really proud of you, and I'd love to know, and I'm sure people are curious, like, what part of your story went into Elizabeth's story? How the inspiration there?
Yeah, it's funny. When I was writing Elizabeth, like I said before, like some of her emotions or her opinions about things, like ranch dressing, Elizabeth and I, we do not like it. And some of the things that Elizabeth feels and the emotion she feels were definitely things that were inspired by me, but her story took on a life of its own. And actually the only eating disorder scene that came from my life got cut from the book. So there's really nothing that happened to me that is in the book, because Elizabeth became her own person. She had her own ideas, but all of my characters have a little bit of me in them. I have to do that in order to connect with them and be able to dig inside of them. That may just be a passion they have, or it may just be an insecurity, or it may just be something even very superficial, but they all are a part of me. I don't know how I could write otherwise. I try to make some of them a little less like me, because you don't need a book full of Alexandras running around. But yeah, but they all have little bits of me in them.
Well, on that note as well, I know that you also wrote this story because you're hoping that readers will read it and take something away, and maybe it will help someone in their life or support themselves. When we walked in, Callie and Eliza were offering these special notes out of a bowl, and so I'm hoping that you might talk about what this means, and then also maybe like what readers might be taking from the story.
Yeah.
Poppy's gonna be.
So, eating disorders are really, really hard, and when someone suffers from an eating disorder, it affects them both physically and emotionally, and it actually messes with your actual brain chemistry, and they're very, very hard to beat. It's possible, and recovery is 100% possible, but it takes a lot of hard work. And I think that they're still misunderstood in the media a lot. I think it's still okay to have an eating disorder joke in a Saturday Night Live skit. Or I just watched Amy Schumer's special on HBO, and she had a whole bit about how, oh, I wish I had an eating disorder, and people say that, and I don't think that even today that it is, people are really aware of that these are legitimate mental illnesses. Anorexia actually has the highest mortality rate of any mental illness, and only about 30% of people get treatment. And so, and I think it's easy as you go about your day, especially if you have a loved one or someone or just people around you don't understand how hard it is. And so I thought that I printed out these affirmations because part of recovery, there is a recommendation, find some affirmations that work for you. Say them every day. Think about them. And so I thought I'd pass them out for two reasons. One, because this is a book about anorexia, so I don't know, there might be people in the audience struggling, there might be people in the audience who have struggled or who knows someone who's struggling, and these affirmations can, or even if, who knows, it might just end up something that speaks to you, because they do work. But another reason I wanted to hand them out is because to people who don't have an eating disorder, these things might seem so simple. Well, of course I value every day, of course I am fine with how I look, whatever, But I think that for people who have eating disorders, they don't believe this. And so they have to go through their day telling themselves these things, because deep down that's missing from them, that feeling. And so I wanted to hand these affirmations out just to see how much work a person with an eating disorder has to do to get well. And along the same lines, at the dessert table, there's a sign over there that says, this is just food. It's not, there's nothing, like, it's just, it's just food. So, you are wonderful, use your support. Don't freak out. It's gonna be okay, because a table like that to us might be like, ooh, yum, a cupcake. But to somebody who is struggling with an eating disorder, that table is a really, really, really scary place to be. So I just wanted to hand out these affirmations. And along with that, another thing about eating disorders is that the treatment is very expensive. and insurance is still lagging. A lot of insurance does not cover treatment month. Elizabeth, in my book, is really lucky that she has parents who can afford it. She's there for a month. A month in an inpatient facility like she's in can cost up to $30,000. Even an hour of therapy can cost $150, and a lot of people can't afford that. And so you'll see on your affirmations there's actually a link to a Facebook page. In honor of my book, I'm running a fundraiser for a nonprofit called Project Heal, and they actually they fund eating disorder treatment. People who are suffering can apply for a grant, and if they accept your grant, they will pay for you to get the help you need. And it was started by two 15-year-old girls back in 2008 who were in treatment for anorexia, and they were seeing these people around them who had to leave before they were ready, or people they knew who didn't get this kind of treatment. And so, yeah, so if you're interested in donating, there's a link on those affirmations as well.
Well, I specifically didn't ask very specific questions about what I lost since the book just came out today. And I didn't want to give anything away, but I know that many of you have questions for Alexandra. So at this point, we wanted to open it up to this amazing audience and see if you have some questions to ask Alexandra. Sybil.
I just wanted to first say thank you. That it's such an important topic, and I can't wait to read the book and also give it to people that I love. And it really touched me hearing you talk about anorexia and